Coming up on show 849, NIO just launched the EC6. Got some pricing and details. Stick around, I'll tell you more. Also on the podcast today, start of sales for the new Mercedes-Benz EVITO Tourer. Got the Mercedes-Benz EQS without some camo. Details on the VW ID4. And also a couple of extra things just to discuss from yesterday's Tesla show that we just didn't get time to talk about properly yesterday. Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you're listening around the world. Welcome to EV News Daily. This is the edition for what happened on Friday, 24th of July. My name is Martyn Lee, and I go through every EV story, so you don't have to. Okay, first story today. Let's talk about the NIO. NIO just launched their EC6 pricing. The NIO EC6 is all electric. It's a coupe. It's, I would say, crossover, sort of crossover-y small SUV. I know that's a terrible description, but NIO is a company that I think deserves and warrants us talking about. Their third model, the EC6. There's three variants. The pricing starts at the equivalent of $52,441 and going all the way up to $75,000-ish dollars. Again, it's equivalent. It's always hard when you go from different currencies. That doesn't include any government subsidies, by the way. The EC6 is the coupe or sportback version of the ES6, which is NIO's very popular mid-sized SUV and has similar exterior dimensions and an identical interior, says Tom Mologney, writing for Inside EVs. He says the EC6 features the NIO Pilot hardware mobile eye chip with 23 sensors. NIO Pilot supports 20 functions, covering typical traffic scenarios of what vehicles frequently encounter in China. It can be upgraded over the air, and this is a car that is super high-tech. The NIO cars are very, very high-tech. They have a big display in the middle, but they do have more than one display. There's sort of two big displays, really. The first one is a 9.8-inch instrument cluster. The big one, though, between the driver and the passenger is an 11.3-inch high-def touchscreen with an AMOLED display and a personal assistant, which I'm not familiar with. I think it's NOMI or NOMI. Anyway, it's an interactive personal assistant. I've heard people rave about this, by the way, and it's one of those things that I've never even seen used in English. Videos online of it being used in Chinese, but if they can get that working to a point at which it does work reasonably well, that could be a nice point of difference to other big EV makers. Now, there's two big voice assistants that I use in my life pretty much every day. I use Alexa, and I've just seen the device come to life. I'd forgotten I had her in here. So I use the Amazon devices, and on my these days, my watch, actually, these days I use the Apple Watch Hey Siri more than I do my phone. I have that turned off, not off, but, just so that I have to manually do it on my phone, but on my watch for things that I don't want to pull my phone out for, or set an alarm, set a reminder, those kind of things. So I use those two a lot, but even then, with all the might of Apple and Amazon, I still don't think these things work faultlessly, and you've kind of got to bend your way to theirs to an extent. NIO, remember, by the way, getting back to the cars, NIO is the company that does battery swapping. They have a lot of these battery swap stations in China, and it appears to be very popular as well. Now, of course, battery swapping is something that Tesla did try back in the day. The Model S engineered, still to this day, I believe, engineered that you can take out the battery and it drops down. Unlike the 3 and the Y, which were engineered very differently. But the NIO cars, the EC6 at least that we're talking about in this story, has a couple of battery sizes. One of them is a 70 kilowatt hour battery pack, and one is a 100 kilowatt hour battery pack. And the ranges given are the Chinese NEDC range estimates, and so largely irrelevant because they're so far away from the EPA and WLTP as well, between anything from a third to a quarter off. Now, 3 different trim levels for it as well, and performance pretty good. 0 to 60 about 5.4 seconds. For the slowest version of this, the quickest version, 4.5 seconds as well. Not ludicrous fast, but I mean, come on, how much quicker do you want to go in an EV? So, that pricing is now out, and it's a question that many people ask me about these Chinese cars as well, that are increasingly designed from the outside original design, the whole thing about the Chinese copying is not just, a myth. There is largely big business in taking a product, copying it, and selling it cheaper, but largely the styling, the design, the software on something like the ES6 and the EC6 I think is very good. Everything that I'm seeing coming out of China is good. More and more car makers like BMW, the iX3 only being made in China, whether that's going to be sold in China or in Europe. They're going to export them there. So the quality's getting a lot better as well. And a company like NIO, well, they've certainly had press days here in Europe, I think in Norway as well. I don't know if any demonstrator cars are available for people to drive, but a company much like BYD, I can see them moving into Europe. But why not North America? Like BYD have a big base in the US, but just not selling cars there yet. But I think yet is the word on this one. Okay, from cars to vans, Mercedes-Benz and have launched the EVITO, the E-Sprinter as well, and the new Mercedes-Benz EVITO Tourer can now be ordered. New dimension in battery electric commercial passenger transport, they say, in terms of range and also for luxury. Battery electric mobility from Mercedes-Benz is shown by a range of 421 kilometers, they say, and this looks like something that will be used a lot of airport runs, a lot of hotels, I imagine, will have these for using as shuttles and things like that. The Mercedes-Benz EVITO Tourer takes over the look of the Vito, the combustion engined version. Under the front sits the electric powertrain. The front wheels are driven on this one, 150 kilowatt motor. It can be charged on AC at 11 kilowatts, and it can do DC fast charging at 110. I don't know why I added one. What a wally, to that. The battery capacity is usable 90 kilowatt hours to get that 421 kilometers on such a big people carrier, big people mover as well. I had a Mercedes-Benz Vito Tourer, one of the luxury ones with the blacked out windows and the leather arms. It's like 6 big leather armchairs inside for a project that I did, oh goodness, a few years ago now, when we were touring the UK, and we hired one for a week, and we sort of lived out of that for a week when we weren't in the hotel, going from city to city for a project I worked on, and it was a very nice place to do a lot of motorway miles. And so the electric version, looking forward to seeing more of that. And staying with the Mercedes-Benz brand, they just dropped another bit of information about the upcoming EQS, the sedan, the saloon. It's going to do 435 miles. Told you that on the podcast a couple of days ago. Now, new spy shots give us a better look at the upcoming flagship car from Mercedes-Benz, says Zach at autoblog.com today. Previous spy photographs have shown a car very, very heavily camouflaged, but this time significantly less cladding. Get a better understanding of the body lines of the vehicle, the true design of the car. The front bumper, mostly one single unbroken curved piece, and a few indents around the bumper as well, but a subtle sculpting to make it more EV-like, because you don't need air inlets and things like that. So a very plain, almost sort of Tesla front end, but not quite as simple as that. I hate comparing anything, because it's the easiest thing for me to do is compare it to a Tesla, isn't it? However, it is going to be a big luxury tourer, a big motorway chomping car. When do we get the EQS? Well, it could be in showrooms in 2021 if it all goes to plan at the moment. Pricing, though, well, that's anyone's guess. Right, let's talk about the VW ID4. Despite the ongoing coronavirus pandemic, Volkswagen's ID4 will start deliveries this year. It is a car coming much, much sooner than a car like the Mercedes-Benz we were just talking about. They're also going to be expanding the plant at Chattanooga in Tennessee, allowing the ID4 to be built locally in the US from 2022. Says Stephen at Green Car Reports. The Chattanooga Times Free Press reported yesterday that equipment for the factory expansion is being shipped, and VW is hiring employees for the VW ID4 assembly line. Pre-production version is 2021, and then the 1,000 jobs in Chattanooga. We'll start pumping out those cars in 2022. Construction work to expand an existing body shop and raise the new building for battery pack assembly is 70% complete already, according to this report. The factory, which has been building things like the Passat and the Atlas, combustion cars. However, as for the battery packs, the cells are going to be made by SKI or SK Innovation, and they're going to be made at the new SK plant in Georgia. And the car, like I say, 2022 for the US, but hopefully this year, end of this year, at least in Europe as well. Maybe not right-hand drive markets, but we've seen the car now. We've seen much more of the ID4, much more of a Model Y competitor. There I go again, comparing everything to Tesla. It's a bad habit I'm trying to get out of. It's a car that I think is going to be popular in all its forms, whether it's the Skoda Enyaq or any of the other brands that they will use to make the ID4. Very compelling. Looking forward to seeing more of it. I'm way more excited about that than the ID3, which is, just a very, very good equivalent to don't call it a Golf. It's a good, solid car. And if you want a car like the Golf, I've owned 2 of them in my lifetime. The Golfs are great. Arguably the only car that you need, because the Golf is just good at everything, and the ID3 will be good at everything, but the ID4, which is that crossover styling, a little bit higher, a little bit more road presence. I think the styling of the ID4 looks nicer as well. I think that's the car for me, which I'm more excited about seeing. Let's talk about Audi next, and due to delivery problems with battery cells, Audi had to stop production of the e-tron Quattro in Brussels earlier this year. In an interview, the new Audi boss said that the problem had been solved and spoke about goals of something we've talked about recently, the Artemis project. This is a story coming from ELECTROHEADS.com today. Now, Marcus Duesmann is the Audi CEO and says, and I quote, "Since the beginning of May, we've been running 2 shifts in Brussels. Again, we've learned that the customers mainly wanted the larger batteries anyway." End quote. E-TRON and E-TRON, the 50 and the 55, and the Sportback as well, come with 2 different battery sizes. Gross, on the big one, gross 95, that's net 86. The smaller one is 71 kilowatt hours. Audi, one of the companies that keeps so much of the battery away from being usable. Big buffer at the bottom and the top. 95 kilowatt hours of energy in that car. You only get access to 86.5 kilowatt hours of it, but they say that's in order to enable charging for the customer at maximum speeds up to 100%. But of course, it's not really 100%. It's, I don't know, whatever it is, 88, 91%. Before, if they gave you access to all the battery, then it would slow down towards the end, whereas the e-trons, to give them their credit, yes, they do charge very quickly all the way to 100%, but it's not really 100%. It's only what the dashboard is telling you is 100%. It's actually 86.5, not 95. Anyway, that's the reason they do it, and some battery protection as well at the bottom end as well, so you don't run the batteries down to 0 and do any kind of damage. They use the pouch cells from LG Chem, like big baggies. It's the best way to describe it, like big baggies of batteries. Not like the hard square ones, like the prismatics, or even the cylindrical ones that you've probably seen another car maker famous for, that begins with T. I'll try not to say their name again when talking about a different company. What is Project Artemis? That is something that they have recently initiated, so that by 2024, they say, this project will have been in place and able to produce a highly efficient electric car, maybe something like the Audi A9 that is all electric, that's very digital, that's very high tech. Well, they've got another 3 years to get around to doing that, so good luck. Okay, let's talk about a couple of things which I didn't get to yesterday. Elon Musk on the results, the Q2 results, also mentions the unacceptably low mileage of a standard range Model Y. A couple of weeks ago on this show, I was talking to you about his tweet. Maybe it was only a week ago. Goodness, time flies. But Elon, via Twitter, naturally, cancelled the Model Y standard range, a car that had been promised, that was on the slideshow at the reveal event. It was on the massive screens. It was there in huge, writing on the digital displays right above Elon on stage, "There will be one." And then he tweeted, "There won't be one." So for those hanging out for a standard range plus Model Y, there will be no one. But rather than saying we're not doing it, he also said we're not doing it because the range is unacceptably low. Now, I mentioned, I won't rehash the whole podcast, but I mentioned before that actually, it wasn't unacceptably low when he announced that car. So why is it unacceptably low now? And I just think, I thought at the time there was something going on there where he was redefining the narrative. He was redefining what you should compare all others to, because they have such a lead, they have such an influence over the industry, that I thought that what he was doing there with a very subtle bit of mind control, in a clever psychological way. And then it turns out yesterday that he actually expanded on that, and he said the new normal, there's a phrase that we've been using a lot in 2020, the new normal is going to be 300 miles for an EV. Now, how many cars are on sale right now that aren't Teslas do 300 miles? Well, there we go. There's your answer. Basically, not many. So Elon clearly knows that Tesla have a bit of a battery lead. They've got Battery Day coming up September 22nd. This piles more pressure on the other car makers. It wasn't so long ago that Tesla was selling a car in the hundreds, the Model S with the small battery packs. They sold a 40 kilowatt hour battery pack. Okay, it was 60 locked, admittedly. It was a 40 kilowatt hour battery pack in the Model S. It did 100 and something miles. It wasn't so long ago that Tesla was selling cars that did 200 miles. But oh no, now they've got a car that'll do 402 miles in the Model S. All of a sudden, and Elon says, well, look, actually, I think 300 miles is now the minimum. And just coming out and saying it. So, what does that mean for things like the Model 3 Standard Range Plus? Does it mean it's on the way out? Maybe. I don't know. I don't think so. It didn't come across to me like that. So, what does it mean for the rest of the industry? Again, probably not a lot. So earlier today, I did a 120-mile motorway journey. The Renault Zoe did an average of 4.55 miles per kilowatt hour. My car has a 41 kilowatt hour battery. It was fully charged overnight because I was on 2p a kilowatt hour overnight cheap rate. So it was fully charged last night. We did 120 miles today, 60 miles each way to on the motorway at a constant. Well, I left it at a constant 62. Inside lane, I was just cruising, wasn't in a hurry, didn't need to do 70 or faster. So I was going pretty slowly, in fairness. So I was doing 100 Ks. But, you know what? Very efficient. I've used, I did have a look at the dash when I got home, 24 or 26 kilowatt hours. The Zoe isn't the most efficient car, but it's pretty small and pretty lightweight. And for me, that car will do 200 miles on a good day in the summer. That's all I need. I don't need 300. But interesting that Elon is telling people they need 300. If they're not an EV driver yet, or maybe they're just fully signed up, they've signed the contract in their own blood, never to disagree with Elon Musk, maybe they're now going to be online on Twitter, going, oh, well, it needs to be 300 because Elon says so. Well, I don't find that. So I find an EV that does a couple of 100 miles is all that I need. But there we go. But then again, range is king. If you get the chance to have more range, you should always go for it. That's what I always say. If you get the chance, go for the range. Whatever you do, if you can stretch, get range. I mean, people say, yeah, but smaller battery, quicker charging, doesn't matter. If you can, get range. Right, a quick story about a former Tesla VP of engineering. Just joined Rimac. They're the electric supercar company doing really mega interesting stuff. His name is Chris Porritt, and he was a VP at Tesla, and he's now the Chief Technology Officer of Rimac. He was the former VP of Engineering at Tesla. Big hire, this actually. Big career experience, a big career at Aston Martin, working on those kind of supercars they make, and then 7 years ago, left the UK to go work in Silicon Valley for a company at a time. In 2013, probably a bit of a risk going from Aston Martin to a company called Tesla to be their VP of Vehicle Engineering, but it all worked out quite nicely. He moved on to Apple to work on their electric car project, and which, who knows what happened to that. And then now he is at Rimac. Big hire for Rimac, so it shows how serious they are. And final story today. Earlier this year in January, I was fortunate enough to get up and close and personal with a new electric karting series. It's called ELECTROHEADS, and it's a way of getting kids into motorsports. The debut event is just happened at the KART track at Northamptonshire. It's fully electric. It's the brainchild of a former F1 engineer called Rob Smedley, who now works for F1. He's a co-founder of the group as well, and he was kind of high profile in Formula One when he was there. I mean, still he is, because he works for F1 on something to do with the technical side of it, but actually for the organisers now. The launch of the ELECTROHEADS e-Kart race series was unfortunately delayed by COVID. I saw it back in January. Autosport International, the big motorsport show in Birmingham. I think they were ready to go, but then with COVID, got slightly delayed. But so many great racing drivers have come up through the ranks with karting, but even then karting can be expensive. You know, a lot of the like one of the most famous champions, Lewis Hamilton, talks about his karting days. They all talk about their karting days. That can be, you know, parents can have to take on 2, 3, 4 jobs just to fund a pretty cheap average karting career. And so the idea of this is a cheaper, more affordable way to get the experience of karting and to get more boys and girls into karts. And motorsport desperately needs more girls getting into it, and girls growing up. Well, my opinion, I mean, they're not saying this, but this is editorializing it with my thoughts. So many young girls need, firstly, better kind of figureheads to look up to, but also just more ways into motorsport, and this could be one of them. For drivers who are from 6 years old, they can race a smaller chassis, and it goes all the way up to 12 years old as well. Like I say, fully electric. If you want to check it out, it is called ELECTROHEADS. There's more events coming in Wilton Mill, North Wales, Teesside, and Rowra, if that is how I say that name's place, in August. If you would like to check out the Bambino and Cadet classes for this, I am super interested in it, and I will be following this very, very closely. Thank you for listening today. Feedback on any of the stories featured today, just email me, hello@evnewsdaily.com, or leave a comment on the show notes, not the show, the show comments on YouTube. Well, thank you so much to everyone who supports this program on Patreon. I literally couldn't do it without you. Thank you to my Patreon partners: Phil Roberts of Electric Future, Brad Crosby, Avid Technology, Brightsmith Group, Porsche of the Village in Cincinnati, Audi of Cincinnati East, Volvo Cars of Cincinnati East, and NationalCarCharging.com and AlohaCharge.com. Check them out. Have a wonderful day. Catch you soon, and remember, there's no such thing as a self-charging hybrid.